Dominic Steele. It's Tuesday morning, it's the 19th of July, and it's my last morning focusing on Al Stewart's book, The Manual, Getting Masculinity Right. I've been reading through this since the start of last week, and I'm going to be interviewing Al about this book on the Pastor's Heart today. It's a super helpful book. Al really, he spends it's in two halves. The first half of the book, he talks about the search for healthy masculinity, confusion, masculinity under attack. Then he looks at what the scriptures say, then the journey from boys to men, how to look after future you, and the power of just turning up. And then in the second half, it's manning up as a son, manning up as a friend, manning up as a workmate, manning up as a single man, manning up as a husband, manning up as a father. And then the final part of the book, the conclusion following the greatest man who ever lived. Today, on the Pastor's Heart, we're thinking about manning up as a father. And this really is his last chapter on manning up. And in his introduction, Al says, as those of you with adult kids will have experienced, at some stage, your children begin to outpace you. They become quicker, smarter, stronger, and sometimes wiser. And I read that paragraph and thought, my kids have become adult kids, and this is true. He notes that most parents are scratching their heads and making it up as you go along. And I mean, that's how I feel. Here we are in a family where my youngest son now is 22, and I feel like I've made it up as we've gone along and made lots of mistakes along the way. Al helpfully points out your aim as a father should be to move your children from having no responsibility, no decisions, and no consequences when they're babies to being young adults with the wisdom to make decisions that have adult consequences. He talks about the difference a dad makes. He draws us to the line in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 4, fathers, do not exasperate your children. Instead, bring them up in the training and the instruction of the Lord. Al notes that Paul writes this instruction to fathers, and that God expects fathers to lead and to be the head of families and to take responsibility to exercise that power. It's an authority that comes with the responsibility of sacrificially loving, of leading and looking after your family. You know, he says it means you have to be around. You have to be present in your children's lives. A good dad, and he's quoting Steve Biddulph here, makes the family feel safe in the world. A bad one makes the family feel afraid, mostly of him. And as Al quoted that line from Steve Biddulph, I remembered a line that he mentioned earlier in the book about a strong man makes the people around him feel safe. Another line from Steve Biddulph, if there's a father in the home, both boys and girls have higher self-esteem, they both do better at school, they stay on in school longer, they become better qualified, more likely to be employed, less likely to be in trouble with the law, less likely to be victims of assault, rape, and sexual abuse. Girls are less likely to experience early sexual intercourse or teen pregnancy, and boys are less likely to be violent or belong to a gang. And boys and girls are less likely to have problems with drugs or alcohol. The cost of growing up without a dad is hardly acknowledged in Australia, but in the US it has been by President Barack Obama, who himself grew up in a house without a dad. And as Al notes, in the African American community, 70% of children are born to unmarried mothers. Al takes us again to that verse, that Ephesians 6 verse, train and instruct but don't exasperate. He's got a whole lot of handy hints. Start early while you can. Try the issue of actions to consequences. Dads are likely to make a difference because they're more likely to enforce boundaries. Anger doesn't motivate. Regular family dinner nights, one-on-one time, family events. And then on the training and instruction of the Lord, really important just to be reading the Bible with your children. And there's nothing that replaces time, truth shared in relationship. The final chapter of the book, following the greatest man, and Al points us to Jesus. Jesus is history's greatest example of a man stepping up to take care of people. He calls men to follow him as Lord and Master, but as a friend and a brother, he calls his men to commit their lives day by day, by caring for others, by taking the message of forgiveness to a dying world to make a difference that will last into eternity. It's a message that naturally should resonate with men. The message of Jesus is true. He talks about historical truth. The message of Jesus gives hope. Hope we desperately need. There's a lovely story from Al about these people struck underground, 33 miners stuck underground, 600 metres underground in northern Chile in 2010. And the rescuers were working to get them out. It took 17 days, I think, for them to get a shaft of light through. A number of them were considering suicide. Some were considering cannibalism. But this little shaft of light drilled from the surface broke through, putting light into the emergency room, and the miners knew that they would eventually be rescued. And that ray of light from the surface kept them going another 52 days. But it was hope. They finally had hope. And when you know what your future holds and you have a hope for the future, it affects your present in a huge way. The 33 hold the record for the longest time underground after a mine disaster before being safely rescued. And they held on so long because they had hope. And Al finishes the book talking about the hope of heaven versus the lack of hope of atheism. So there it is. Really good book. The Manual by Al Stewart. I've already talked about a chapter with my youngest son. I'm keen to lend it to him, and I'm keen to lend it to my other son as well. And I pray that it'll be widely read and have a big impact. And I'll look forward to talking to Al about that this afternoon on The Pastor's Heart. Thanks for joining us on Daily Bible Time today. Back to Isaiah and Isaiah 12 tomorrow morning. God bless.